Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and today I'm profiling the 1953 Bowman football set. And this was a 96 card issue, which is the smallest Bowman set. The 48 Bowman set was 108 cards, and then the 1950 to 1952 sets were 144 card sets. And then Bowman made sets up until 1955. So I believe the 54 and 55 were also 144 card sets. So 53 was the smallest at just 96 cards. Now, I have two cards pictured here today, the Otto Graham and Norm Van Brocklin. And these cards feature, you can see here, a colorized player picture. Now, some were painted and others were photographic, along with their name and team listed inside this rather large football graphic. Now, my buddy Chris from the channel Stories and Cardboard, him and I were texting back and forth this week and emailing each other. And he believes that the white football was intentional because 1953 was the first year of the NFL being on nationwide TV on Saturday nights, and they would use the white football for the night games. And I think he's probably right on that. I've never been able to confirm that. I don't think he has either, but I think it's a plausible theory that they would be putting the white football on the cover or on the front of the card because the white football was used back then. And you can see a white border also surrounds the picture. Now, these cards can be very difficult to find centered. I'm not, overly crazy about centering, having to be perfect. I just like my cards to be show well, and I think it's more complicated than just necessarily saying a good centered copy, because sometimes I want to have the example, because some of these cards are very hard to find centered, and they can be very expensive if you do find them centered. So I just like nice, presentable examples with good registration, and nice mid-grade examples, because that's what I collect. Now, on the back of the cards here, you can see that there is a goal post with the card number inside of it, and then also on these cards, there's the player's name, the vital statistics running along the top. The short biography follows, and then on the bottom is split into two parts. You have one side that gives the previous season statistics, while the other has a referee call or a trivia question over a red football-shaped icon. Now, it's believed that the 96 card set was printed on 3 sheets of 32 cards, and that there was no sheet that was any scarcer than the others. However, there are 24 cards that are listed as short prints, including 3 I'm going to show in this video: Emlyn Tennell, Lou Groza, and Frank Gifford. Now, it's not known whether the Bowmans was still having trouble cutting and distributing the larger size cards in their factory, or if the short printing was the result of some other reason. I looked up some information in the site Cardboard Connection, and it's not really known, so those are just maybe a couple possibilities. And there are even some that don't think those cards are that short printed. Not really too sure about that. I think you pay a little bit more of a premium for the short prints that are designated than you do for the other cards. Now, of my run of key football card sets that I'm building, and I've talked about this from 1950 to 1989, I have at least 18 of the key cards from every one of those sets, except for Marcus Allen in 1988 Topps. So that's quite an endeavor. It took me probably about 10 years to do it. But I thoroughly enjoyed learning more about the game of football and a lot about these cards. I have much more knowledge about baseball than I do football going into this, but now I would say my knowledge of football is certainly caught up to that, just because I've spent a lot of time acquiring football cards. Now, the 53 Bowman set, like I said, it's just a tough set. It's not rare or scarce or anything like that, but for a mainstream issue, it's a pretty tough set. Now, I buy my cards already graded, and like I said, it's tough to find them centered and in high grade. I'm a mid-grade collector, so typically I buy grades 5 to 7 from this era, but I did add a couple of nice 4s to the group because I found good examples at a good price, so I just went ahead and pulled the trigger. The only notable rookie in this set is the Eddie Lebaron, who was a good quarterback, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer. There are no Hall of Fame rookies. Now, just getting a little bit into the flavor of what was going on in 1953, the top musicians of that year were Perry Como, Percy Faith, and Dean Martin. Very much different times back then. The top movies were Walt Disney's Peter Pan, From Here to Eternity, starring Frank Sinatra, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes with Marilyn Monroe. In world events, you had the U.S. and Korea signing an armistice, ending the Korean War. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay are the first to climb Mount Everest. Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain was crowned. And then Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin died that year as well. Now here are three of the greats from the Detroit Lions from that time. All three of these gentlemen are in the Hall of Fame. You have running back Doe Walker, offensive lineman Lou Kriekmore, and the great Bobby Lane. Now they only played 12-game seasons back then, and the Lions finished with a 10-2 record and won the NFL championship, defeating the Cleveland Browns 17-16. Now, Doe Walker was a popular player who was a running back, he was a defensive back, and he was the team's kicker. In just 6 seasons, he made 5 Pro Bowls and he was a 4-time All-Pro. That year, he had 336 yards rushing and averaged 5.1 yards a carry. He also caught 30 passes for 502 yards and a 16.7 yards per catch. He was really a special athlete. And then next to him, you have Lou Kriekmore, who was an offensive and defensive lineman, primarily an offensive lineman. He was a 6-time All-Pro in his 10-season career, which lasted from 1950 to 1959. Now, Kriekmore credits the guy right next to him here, Bobby Lane, for making him a great player. He was always afraid to let him down. If Kriekmore missed a block, Lane would kick him in the shins and chew him out. Lane was the unquestioned leader of that team. And Bobby Lane was just a gunslinger. He had a reputation for just slinging that ball over the field, very comparable to Brett Favre. He never wore a face mask in his 15-year career, even though the others around him started to. He was just fearless. He was also a notorious partier in an era of hard-drinking quarterbacks. When Bobby Lane said block, you blocked. And when he said drink, you drank, said his teammate Yale Larry. And it's an oft-repeated quote that I just love. And Lane didn't put up any big numbers really per se or throw the prettiest ball, but he knew how to inspire a team and win a game. It was said that Bobby Lane never lost a game. The Lions just ran out of time. His numbers don't rank anywhere near the top of the all-time statistical leaders, but he was one of the greatest to ever play the position. Here we have 4 Cleveland Brown legends. The Browns were 11-1 in 1953, had the best record in the NFL. Otto Graham played 10 seasons of professional football, went to 10 championship games and won 7 of them. He was the unquestioned leader of the Browns. While both Lane and Graham were winners, meaning Bobby Lane and Otto Graham were winners, Graham also put up great numbers for the time. In 1953, he was the league MVP. He led the NFL in passer rating with a 99.7 rating, which was 15 points higher than second-place Y.A. Tittle, who had an 84.1 rating. He also led the NFL with 2,722 yards passing. Now, next to him, you have the great Marion Motley, who was the first of the Super Browns running backs. You had Marion Motley, then later on Jim Brown, of course, and then Leroy Kelly. He weighed about 238 pounds, which is huge for a man back then. He loved the collision, and like Earl Campbell, would run you right over. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry in his career, which is the highest for a running back in NFL history. He was also an outstanding pass protector. Here we have Lou Groza. This is one of the short prints in the set. He was second in the MVP voting that year after Otto Graham. He was also second in the NFL with 108 points, and he made an incredible, for that time, 23 of 26 field goals. Now, he was also an offensive tackle and a center and a defensive tackle, and that's what players did back then. They played a lot of different positions. And next to him is Dante Lavelli, the outstanding receiver. For the Browns, he caught 45 balls that year, which was 7th in the league, and had 783 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns, which was both 5th in the league. And he was one of Otto Graham's favorite targets and a very sure-handed receiver of the time. Just a beautiful card, too. I love both these cards. Here are 2 of the great Eagles from that era. You got Pete Pios, who led the NFL in catches with 63 catches and yards. He was the only 1,000-yard receiver that year with 1,049 yards. And he also tied for the lead in touchdowns with 10. Just a super receiver, and I've shown this card before, but of that white football that he's catching between his hands there. Just a super cool image. And then next to him, you have Concrete Charlie, and it looks like here Chuck Bednarik, that he's going off to battle with that cool looking, looks like an Army helmet and that green jersey. And he was the best center of that era and one of the best linebackers as well. He intercepted 6 balls in 1953, and this was his 4th of 6 straight first-team All-Pro selections. One of the great personalities of the game as well. 49ers were 9-3 in 1953, and unfortunately they did not make a card, Bowman didn't, of the NFL's leading rusher that year, Joe the Jet Perry. He was the only running back to have over 1,000 yards. He finished with 1,018, and it's really unfortunate he didn't have a card in this set. You did have Y.A. Tittle, who was second in passer rating with an 84.1, and second in touchdowns with 20, and 5 in passing yards with 2,121. I just love that card of him. And then in the middle there, you got the King, Hugh McElhenney, who just recently passed away. I spoke about that in my last video. Another just wonderful-looking card from this set. And then at the end here, you have Leo Molini. And this is my only BVG card in the set, but again, I just took the opportunity to buy cards that I liked, no matter the grading company, between SGC, BVG, and PSA, just because I wanted to have the examples, given how tough it is to get some of these cards. Here are 2 other short prints in the set. The Giffords tends to be a pretty tough card, and I got that one last year and got a good deal on it. The Giants were 3-9 that year, but good days were ahead for them. They won the NFL championship in 1956, and they had 2 greats playing on the team at this time, in Frank Gifford and Emlyn Tunnell, as you can see here. And just wonderful images of these. I love that Tunnell's got the white football as well, as you can see in the photo. Here we have 3 horizontal images of Rams from that era. You got Norm Van Brocklin and wide receiver Tom Fears and Crazy Legs Elroy Hirsch. The Rams were 8-3-1 in 1953. Van Brocklin was 3rd in touchdowns with 19, and in yards also with 2,393. Hirsch was 3rd in the league with 61 catches and 2nd with 941 yards. All 3 of these gentlemen are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And just love the colors on this Tom Fears card right there. And the Hirsch also has nice coloring in the background. Beautiful images. And the last card I'm going to show is this Charlie Trippy. And he was on the lowly Chicago Cardinals, who were 1-10-1 that year. Now Trippy, who's also in the Hall of Fame, was 4th in the NFL MVP voting that year. He was so versatile. He was a running back, a punter, a kick returner. He even played some quarterback. He had a couple seasons where he started several games at quarterback, and I believe it was 1951 and 1952. A great all-around threat. And he's still alive, I believe. He's in his, got to be in his late 90s now, and of all the players I've shown, he's the only one that still is alive, as would be expected. I mean, this set's from 1953. So just a great set, and I'm just glad to show it off today, and hopefully you enjoyed this video and this look back on the 53 Bowman football set. Everybody have a great day.